Hey guys.
Welcome to Two Guys in Hockey Talk Season 6, Episode 7. We got a banger for you. Evan, how you doing?
We got a banger. Well, I certainly hope that you mean that in the good sense, not like an all beat up washing machine kind of pounding around. No, I'm doing great. Really excited to get moving with our show here. So, for the first time, we're bringing on two guests at the same time, guys. This is kind of like not one, but two. Kind of like like the Ric Flair kind of idea here. But anyway, so it's going to be great. We got a bunch of questions, very different backgrounds of our two guests here that are our guest headliners here for tonight. But before we do, why don't you tell everybody how they can follow?
You guys can go check us out on our website at twoguysinhockeytalk.com. We are on Twitter /X, hockey_2, or Evan at REV. And you can follow us on Facebook and on YouTube. Just look up Two Guys in Hockey Talk. Give us a like, follow, subscribe. It really helps us out.
Also, just like to thank our sponsors. So JR Web Designs that provide with our website. Our music brought to us by Penny Billionaires. Also, Puckpedia for all your information, man. They are doing good. In fact, we'll have Hart Levine on next month, as well as Semi-Pro League out in Michigan area called the Kalkaska Battlers, who we partner with as well. So you guys got to make sure you check them out. You can go to their YouTube channel, and we'll be sending links as soon as they start up. I think we're only a week away from their season opening up. And essentially, guys, we have all these different segments going on. So make sure that you stick around for the show or come back. But having said that, man, I'm jacked. We got a packed show. And if we're going to do this, we better get to our guest headliners. So, guys, here tonight, we have Darryl Wolski. He's a hockey agent. We have Scott Glennie, formerly number 8 overall pick to the Dallas Stars. Also, WHL, if you are a Brandon Wheat King, you're going to love to be able to hear from these guys. So they are Western Canada boys that enjoy a good conversation. Well, I actually haven't talked to you, Scott, so we'll see in a minute. But, guys, let's go to our guest headliner. Guest headliner, brought to you by JR Web Design. Is your website stuck in the Stone Age? Well, you need JR Web Designs. They'll craft you a website that's as awesome as our show. Hey, guys, so glad that you guys got a chance to make it here. Thanks, Darryl. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us again, or having me again, rather.
Well, we appreciate you both, and we're going to get right into it because we have a lot of questions. And the first one goes to you, Darryl. I know that last time you were on the show a few seasons back, you talked about just kind of the dynamics between player, agent, and players. And I wanted to know if you could share for our listeners, as a hockey agent, how do players go about finding representation, and do they do it themselves, or do you go about looking for these players in the game?
Well, I think there's two answers to that. Number one, I think of guys like Manny DeSouza and Scott Bonner and Jerry Johansson at the Sports Corporation. Those guys, they're going out there and they're looking for the next Seth Jarvis. They're looking for the next, Slavkovsky. They're out there looking for the next guy, looking for the next young guy. So they're out there going to the John Reed tournament, going to those kind of things, going to CSSHL events, and they're out there hunting down the next big, not 14-year-old anymore, the next 12-year-old. And so who's the next, who's the next hot 12-year-old? For me, I don't do that. That's a different business model, so to speak. For me now, a lot of my business comes to me through referrals. And so guys will say, well, hey, how did you get this job in Russia? Or how did you get this job in Korea? Or how did you get that job in Czech Republic? And they say, well, it's Darryl, and Darryl helped me out, and he's been doing it for a long time. For me, as much as I have a website and social media presence and stuff like that, I really don't knock on a lot of doors anymore.
Absolutely fair. And I think we talked about this before, because I joked that I'll go to the Brick Invitational Tournament and check out players. In fact, I remember the year that Cole Caulfield and Jack Hughes played there. I wrote him into my iPhone, right? And I said, I'll check back in 3 years and see how these guys are doing. It's just like, but it's kind of creepy telling people that you're following these 10-year-olds.
Wow. And you know what? I used to run a single A and a double A tournament in Brandon, Manitoba called the Tournament Champions. And one game I was sitting at the big Keystone Center where Scott played about 400 games. And this kid was at center ice, and he took the face off and he went straight down, scored a goal. Go, whoa, who is that kid? First of all, I don't watch a lot of hockey for the record. So then I thought, who is that kid? And it turned out to be Quentin Howden, who ended up being a first-round draft pick, played Hockey Canada, and this and that. So Quentin Howden, Cody Eakin were a couple of the first guys that I kind of noticed, I guess, and brought to the attention of some people. And that's where it kind of all started for me with those two young guys. But since then, like I said, my business model has changed where, a guy like Seth Jarvis, for example, those kind of players like that, I'm not going crazy because it's like a 30-horse race. There's 30 agents from all over North America that want Seth Jarvis as a client. And so you got to be the bigger, brighter, the shinier coin, so to speak, that's going to somehow impress a guy like Seth and his family. No different when Scott was, being recruited as a young 14-year-old guy, being a draft pick of the Brown Wheat Kings, and then like everybody wanted a piece of Scott. And then, of course, they're talking to his dad, Don Sr., and trying to schmooze the parents, and they schmooze Scott. And that's what it happens. The business is more now, it's actually getting a lot younger of recruiting young guys, like guys that are 12 years old.
Wow. Okay. Well, since he's talking about you, Scott, you're drafted number 8 overall to the Dallas Stars. Congratulations. That feat alone, man, to be in that top 10. But to get to the place where you were and position yourself that high in the draft, you needed an incredible junior career, which you did with the Wheat Kings. So you had 340 points in 252 games. So I worked it out, of course, because of Elite Prospects. They help. 1.22 points per game is what you had. Can you tell us what that experience was like during that last year going into the draft? And do you sit around with friends and family sometimes and just kind of tell stories? Or has just the years faded away and that's long behind you now?
Well, of course, we still, me and my family will tell stories about the draft, and that draft was in Montreal, and that was the first time that me and my family had been out to Montreal, and it was a beautiful place, and it was a great experience. And when Dallas took me that high, I was actually a little bit surprised because they were one of the only teams that I actually didn't speak to before the draft. Funny enough.
Oh, wow.
I talked to basically every team outside of 2 teams, and they were one of them. I did. They did a psych evaluation, and I didn't speak with management, but that's when Dallas was going through some changes as an organization as well. So, I know there was some different things going on there too. So, but yeah, I mean, for me playing in Brandon, it was an incredible time. I happened to get to play with some incredible players. Obviously from my line mates, I played with 2 full-time NHL guys, which definitely, helped the cause there. I was playing with Braden Shen for 3 years and Matt Calvert, who played with Columbus and Colorado there for a long career as well. So, that definitely helped, get me to, get those points that you guys are talking about. And it definitely also helped, where I was drafted. And I think it definitely, helped the process of, especially when you get to pro and you start playing the pro game, it definitely is a different game. And, those guys were already, pro guys. So that the jump in that regard definitely wasn't as difficult.
So I just see here, Pavel. So Nick Murdoch, by the way, you guys will know who. So Nick was a guest at the end of last year. He quickly came on with us. He is the one who got famous with Paul Bissonnette. We call him Bang. If you guys remember behind the glass, the big incidents that were going on Twitter. So Nick had just, because of course you're talking about the Dallas Stars. So, hey, Nick, good to see you again.
Yeah, we appreciate you tuning in. We have a little bit of discussion about people and the things. So people are just kind of commenting as we go along, and we'll try to get to the questions as they come in. But, Glennie, do you want to just kind of tell us, you go through injuries in your career, it's part of the game. It's tough. How do you prepare mentally and physically for that throughout a season to be ready for the game, especially if you're being asked to play a certain amount of minutes and relied upon? How do you approach that mentally as an athlete?
You know what? I think this is for every guy that plays pro. It's just part of the process and part of the game. I don't think anyone wants to get hurt, but when you're playing hockey and you're playing, an 82 game season, it's just something that happens, and you're not the only guy that's going through it. And I think that's, what a lot of guys understand too, is that we're all, at the end of the day, everyone's playing hurt. And, as just being a teammate alone, I mean, you owe it to each other to, if you can play and you're going to be able to help the team. I think if there's an expectation amongst the players that you're going to play. And at the same time too, there's a lot of guys in the pro system that are always trying to make a name for themselves, and everyone's trying to put food on the table. And I think that obviously taking yourself out of the lineup obviously gives other players opportunities to definitely showcase their talents and take your spot. So I think mentally at the end of the day, it's like, hey, this is the job. This is what you signed up for. It's you got to go out there, and regardless of how you're feeling, it's funny when the game starts. Maybe you feel it every now and then, and maybe it affects your play depending on what the injury is to an extent. But for me, when I was playing hurt, it's not something that you really think about until you're going on the trainer's table after the game and asking for a bag of ice or a couple of Advils.
So just a quick question. How difficult, like I think fans have a hard time understanding. I'll just take this year, right? We'll talk a little bit at the very end here, Scott, just about your coaching and U17. I believe you're in Edmonton, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So let's just use your local team there with the Oilers. We're local too. So,
yeah.
But
yeah.
So we're talking about abdominal type stuff, that recovering for guys like Nurse or McDavid, and like I wonder what's it like to get back to that elite level you were at previously when you're recovering. I mean, it could be a groin injury, especially for a goalie, right? Like maybe explain to people the difficulty of returning to where you once were.
Well, I think with those guys specifically, especially when, for me, when I look at Connor McDavid, that guy and those guys take care of their bodies, so well, to a point where, the normal person just really wouldn't understand at all what they're doing on a day-to-day basis to, keep the upkeep and keep their bodies where they need to be. And, if they're hurt, those guys are, working around the clock. And I mean, from sun up till sundown, to manage that injury and to make it, the best of the ability that for them to play. So, if they're coming back, I know it does take some time. Obviously, there's an adjustment period where you're not on the ice, and when guys are playing, I mean, there's always going to be that adjustment to come back and play. But I find with the like the more I watch the game and you see the great ones, like when I watched Nikita Kucherov not play for an entire season and then come out in the playoffs and lead the entire playoffs in scoring, I couldn't believe it, to be honest with you, because I'm just like, I don't know how somebody could do that. But I mean, these top players, what they do and what they have access to medically now, you see guys come back that feel like they look the same relatively quickly. So again, I know Connor and those guys eat, sleep, and breathe the game. I don't know them personally, but I know that just from being around guys that obviously are that stature, those guys are doing whatever it takes to be the best.
And so, Darryl, I mean, kind of to shift it over, when you're going into a new season with the NHL club, and Scott had a good career being able to direct himself. Do you know that if there are players that are draft eligible that are hoping for a big year to get drafted by an NHL club, like they're aware of this, or like is it something that teams come to you or the player, or like how does that relationship work?
Normally the team will come to me, and you have to be somewhat, you got to keep your cards close to your chest to some degree, but on the other hand too, you got to play ball with these guys and let them be as honest and open with them as you can, right? When you're doing negotiations and maybe a guy just finished an injury in the summer and he rehabbed in the summer, sometimes you don't disclose that. You know what I mean? Like if the he's recovered from, say, a high ankle sprain in the summer, there's really no point really bringing that up in, say, end of August, beginning of September when you're doing contract stuff. So some of those things are made public to the teams and some of those things are not. It's an incredibly small world. Like years ago, I had a player who was involved in that Brendan Leipzig ordeal with that whole going back and forth. And, I had a guy from the Czech Republic call me about one of the players involved in that. And he goes, is this going to be a problem? I says, well, no. He said like 2 words in the whole thing. But I mean, gives you an idea of how small the world it is and how it's pretty tough to hide that kind of information.
Wow.
And so do players decide that, like, I mean, of course, depending on the options, like there's a particular league that they want to go through. I know that there's, you both know that, and you can both maybe comment on the whole changes with the NCAA, the BCHL and everything happening in Canada and college hockey. But really, like, are there a lot of options for people to play both in the KHL and AHL, or is it more so like you have one or the other and that's an option, or due to proxy, due to visas or whatever it may be, it's like you got to stick there and play there. That's your best opportunity.
It's really hard to tell guys. Jerry Johansson, when I first got into this business, always had a great line, and he says, it's great managing somebody's career when it's going up, but when it comes down, it's horrible. And he's right. I mean, when you're managing expectations, like, I put a thing on LinkedIn and Twitter the other day about delusional. And I had this one parent call me from Minnesota and said, oh, my kid is he's close to playing in the North America League. For people that don't know, the North America League is kind of equivalent to the BCHL and NAHL. He said, yeah, he was close to being the backup goalie in this team. And, but right now he's the fourth string. Keep in mind, I said fourth string in some tier 3 team somewhere. So by him being, that's the problem. The other problem with this business is the delusional factor of the parents is so insane. Like, these people think that, oh, he's good enough for the USHL, he's good enough for the BCHL. Meanwhile, he's the fourth string goalie on Junior B or Junior C. Well, I have a better chance of dating Halle Berry in this, in the North America League.
Hey, I wonder, because I've been in a lot of conversations around that when I see that, and I throw your name out there. So if I sent them your way, my apology.
No, but you know what I mean? It's really, like, I see this guy, the lost trucker, said, what's my perspective on the BCHL separation from Hockey Canada? You know what? Like, at the end of the day, what did the BCHL lose by leaving Hockey Canada? The only thing they really lost is that they can't participate in the Centennial Cup. And really, is that big of a deal, I guess? Maybe not. But I think from a league standpoint, so I'm going to go back in the days, like when, say, a guy like Travis Zajac from Winnipeg gets drafted in the first round by New Jersey. Well, now that NHL development money at that time went to the entire league, the whole 130-team league that NHL development money might have been, what's it, Scott, $50,000 or $75,000 for a first-round draft pick?
That's 50.
Yeah, and Travis Zajac was drafted 6 years before you, but I'm just saying, like, maybe the development money is up to $100,000 now for a first-round draft pick. So instead of that $100,000 being split amongst the 130 teams all across Canada, now it's just split amongst the 20 teams in BCHL. And realistically, the odds of a guy from Way Sakapo, or a guy from Ocean Blizzard, or a guy from Hearst, or whatever team, the Portage Terriers, getting drafted in the NHL in the first 2-3 rounds is almost zero. Like, I know that Ocean's had an NHL draft pick. I know that Portage just had Dean Stewart. He was a draft pick of the Coyotes. But I mean, like, a prolific player like a Travis Zajac, the odds of that happening in Eastern Canada, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, I would say is almost zero.
So let me move this over just before you go to your next question. Just going over to so Scott, this is kind of for you continuing on this NCAA. So if you had it was an open door, like this whole NCAA thing, where you could play WHL, move to NCAA, or would you have taken that route yourself?
Knowing what I know now, absolutely. But I mean, at the time, I mean, it's hard to make that decision. I mean, you obviously you get close with your teammates. Kelly McCrimmon's a pretty respected individual in the hockey community. Obviously you got, I had ties in Brandon. I was close to my family. So in that regard, it's hard to say. But now if I look back on the whole situation, if I'm getting guidance to guys, just for my sake, like I was telling this to Darryl the other day, my 19-year-old season. When you play at home, you're getting matched up against, rookies and 16-year-olds that are, just jumping into the league. And as a, draft pick or a guy that's, trying to get ready to go play professionally the following year, for a development standpoint, I don't think that's necessarily good for a guy like myself. And you see the guys that come out of college, there are a lot of the guys that would get called up at the end of the season. We had junior guys and college guys, and I remember the college kids were always a little bit more ready to play, just because I think the level at which they were playing at. And, when you're playing against men and you're playing in, tougher situations, I think you're more ready. So for my sake, now I look back, it's like, of course I would have loved to have, gone to a UND or a Boston University or one of those places for my final season, because it just, that's from my standpoint for developing my game. It's going to be, astronomically better, I think personally, but that's just my opinion.
Now, I don't know if there are specific contracts at that level, and you guys can maybe, Darryl, you can allude to it. But if, say, Scott, you get into something like, a Boston University at that time and you're 20 and you want to transition up because you have an opportunity in maybe in Toronto, right? You get an opportunity to play there. Is there a way of transitioning that? Is it just as simple as a trade, or is there more logistics and lawyer talk behind that before you can move yourself up to get that better opportunity?
Are you saying for him, hypothetically?
Yeah, hypothetically, yeah. Like if he goes to a better school for a better opportunity, like if you're starting off with that school and you're going the NCAA route, but there's an opportunity to play maybe somewhere else where you have a better opportunity with more ice time.
You're saying to get out of the NCAA is what you're referring to?
Maybe it could be any other, yeah.
You're saying going to the transfer portal now.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that what you mean by going to the transfer portal? So I'm going to give you a quick transfer portal story. So I had a client, Minnesota kid, and he was Mr. Hockey. You're Mr. Hockey in Minnesota playing high school hockey. It's kind of a big deal. So anyways, he was Mr. Hockey. He went directly to college. He bypassed his 19 and 20-year-old year playing USHL or NHL, which I strongly advised against. I said he should go. But he decided to go to college, plays a couple years for Grant Potolny, who's a coach in Northern Michigan. And then he says, Darryl, I want to go into the transfer portal. I'll go, man, you got 3 points in 2 years. Like, which Division I team will want you? So that's the problem with the transfer portal is, and I talked this guy out of it. I said, stay in Northern Michigan, get your degree. You're never going to play pro hockey anywhere. Like, your family, you're millionaires. It doesn't matter. Just get your degree. But to go into the transfer portal, it's really an easier said than done thing. And I always advise people, unless you had some incredible year and you had 35 points, maybe you played 32 games as the goalie, you had 25 wins playing for North Dakota, sure, go in the transfer portal. But normally speaking, if you have that kind of stats and points, why would you want to leave? Why would you want to leave something, Scott, I was never a player of your caliber. So, if you're in a comfortable situation playing in, say, Minnesota Duluth, for example, a great place, great school, why would you want to leave?
Yeah. And that's a good point, Darryl, too, because the more I think about these questions, the hypotheticals, but at the same time, it's like, if when you're in good situations and you're getting ice time and your coach likes you and you're playing a lot and life's going good, everyone seems to think the grass is always greener on the other side as well, too. So when I equate all of that stuff in there as well, it's like, hey, yeah, we're going to take a risk to go to a new place. It's not just as simple. It's like, it's going to work out for you. So if things are going well, like which they were for me and Brandon, if I go back to that point, that's also something that I would definitely have equated into this whole thing too, is that, guys jumping ship and going to a new spot. I've had different coaches. I've had some that liked me and I've had some that didn't. So, if you get in the situation where you get to a new place and your coach doesn't like you, you might be, wishing that you never did that too.
I think, guys, if I can just say one more thing about that, I think the transfer portal, and I saw Deion Sanders talk about this. He says, like, for recruiting football players now, they just go in the transfer portal. He says they might only grab now, I don't know how many players a college football team has, 60 players. He says, so when they go in their new recruiting class, they maybe only grab 4 or 5 guys out of high school. The rest they grab out of the transfer portal because it's like free agency. All these guys go, well, I'm playing at, say, some JUCO school. I'm playing at some last chance U place. And maybe they're pretty good players and they have a chance to go up into a decent Division I program, which Colorado is a decent Division I Colorado program. And they can go play for Deion Sanders and get some exposure and get some NIL money, But other than that, like in hockey, you see players enter the transfer portal, always in that March and April timeframe. And it doesn't work out for a lot of guys. A lot of guys will go to the transfer portal thinking that they're cool, they're sexy, they're really a hot ticket. and then they find out they're not a hot ticket, and they find out that nobody in Division 1 wants them, then they end up going to play in Division 3.
So what I'm wondering about, though, now I don't know how this is hypothetical, because this is all just beginning right now as they start dealing with stuff in courts and lawyers get involved and all the money with this. But so essentially, though, so if I say take the BCHL, I go through the NCAA, like I can essentially go through the NCAA, play out my time, not sign my contract, become a free agent. So if I go major junior and say, who is it that just declared their NCAA? One of the
kids from Regina Pack, some guy.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just say in that case. So my question is say an NHL team drafts them, not thinking they're going through the NCAA route and they're going through major junior, because they know what the plan is as far as getting them signed. But now if they jump over to NCAA, could they play out their time and become a free agent if they can't sign, which is starting to happen more often than it used to in the past?
Well, I think with this whole thing, this is why they've delayed the answer on this until November and what they're going to do with the NCAA and the CHL agreement. Like, I think that's probably just one example of 100 problems that exist out there. So, like, right now, Scott gets drafted as an 18-year-old. Dallas has to sign him before he's 20. However, Scott went to North Dakota. Well, they got 4 years to sign him now. So they have those NHL teams have a couple extra years. And you'll see a team like the Winnipeg Jets, who do like NCAA players, they can sit on a guy like Connor Hellebuck for 3 or 4 years. They don't have to sign him right away, so it's to their advantage. But now, so say a player leaves the CHL and then goes to NCAA, what happens then? I mean, there's so many. I just think this is I'm still not a big believer that this deal or this idea is going to happen, because I think there's so many. Like, this is just one.
It's really complicated, yeah.
It's very interesting. Yeah, and I wasn't familiar with some of the terminology and insights, so we appreciate you guys sharing it. You did answer Nick's question, who said, is there somewhat of a choice for players to pursue? But then Lost Trucker was going to ask, and I was going to get to this question for Scott. How many games have you been watching in person as a scout? Are you finding it stressful or fun? And how has post-life the professional hockey career been for you, Scott?
It's been good. I mean, of course, there's always once you're done playing, there's that little period where you're trying to figure out, what direction that you're going to take, and I think every hockey player goes through it, where you're like, okay, well, you're used to this, this one habit that you've been doing for your whole life, and then all of a sudden it's just like that, it's gone. So there was a little bit, it took some time away, and then I got the itch back again to get back in the arena, and started working with Darryl, kind of got me back on my feet there. And then I moved out to Edmonton, and Sean Bell called me and said they're starting a new league up out here. And it's for, former guys that, a lot of former guys that played, been around in the game, and that are looking to, start up a coaching, career. So I thought it was a good move for me to come out here and, kind of, get my feet wet in the coaching aspect of things. 'Cause I mean, it is definitely it's definitely a much different side than being a player, obviously. But I mean, for me, it hasn't really been stressful. Evaluating players, at the end of the day, I think when you're prepared and you know what you want, and you know what you're looking at, obviously, and once the higher you get, I mean, if you're drafting players in the NHL, of course, you're going to be a little bit stressed if you're taking guys. There's always going to be that. That little voice in the back of your head saying you could be wrong. But at this moment in time, I'm just in the lower ranks, so I don't really have that voice in my head right now. I tend to feel like I'm right on a lot of the younger guys right now, so we'll just that's where I've been at with that.
No, that's fair. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll let you ask your question, because
So if you have, go ahead and ask yours, and then I'll do a final one for them both to respond, and then we'll call it a wrap.
For sure. I guess, teaching youth, I believe it is that you're coaching. What is one of the key fundamental goals that you want to teach or advise young players of, regardless of how far they'll make it, that they should learn or really try to master in the game of hockey, whether it's on or off the ice? Maybe it's a drill. Maybe you want to be Tortorella and just bag skate them. No.
I mean, not this day and age. That's for sure. My email would be blown up with parents like you've never seen if that happened right now. But I mean, for me, honestly, guys, like I just the work habits and off the ice, being a good person, taking care of yourself. you can only do so much as a player, and go like without just having a good foundation of work ethic. And I know so many guys say this: work ethic, and then off the ice, taking care of your body and making hockey, your number one priority. And outside of that, I mean, it's hard to. There's always going to be skilled players. There's always going to be top guys. But at the end of the day, it's the guys that really do care, take care of themselves, show up. They show up to practice every day. They want to get better. They want to work harder, and they're eager to learn. I've had a lot of players now that's come through the system, and unfortunately, you only get so many of those guys. And for me, I've seen it. I've seen lots of guys, have tons of skill. I mean, even for myself, I mean, I thought I, worked pretty hard, but it didn't work out. But look at guys like Ryan Garbett or a guy like Jordy Ben, where these guys are, 27, 28 years old playing in the Central Hockey League, but their mindset's never changed one single time. And they worked harder than anybody, but they found a way there. And that's what I tell these kids. If you don't have the proper mindset, and you can't make this your top priority, then we're going to have a tough time getting you to where you want to be. So that's kind of my mentality when it comes to coaching, is just, show up, be eager to learn and have that work ethic, and, things typically will go in the right direction.
Okay, so I'm going to ask one last question. I'm going to get you both to give your version of your answer of it, whether it's the same or not. And that is, when it comes to looking at players, when they're younger, let's just say 20 and under, okay? So this can be anywhere from, say, 12 to 20 years old. Obviously, it's going to be a little variance because when they're really young, it's not quite as much. How much emphasis do you put on the analytics of their game? Or does that start coming more into play at a certain age? So, Darryl, why don't I get you to start us off, and then, Scott, you can wrap it up with your answer.
I think a lot of it, for me, the quote-unquote Megan Shaika, and I love Megan, by the way, the analytics, what she does is phenomenal for the pro level. But, when you're talking at the HHL level or the Manitoba Junior Hockey League level, even the BCHL level, I really don't know how much analytics matter. I really don't. I think the true thing for recruiting, and it's happening today. I had a player from Winnipeg who signed with Estevan, the SJHL, and they went to Huddle and Instat, and they watched his shifts when he played in the North America League over the last 2 years. I think the video is more important. I think going to a simple thing like elite prospects, for me, I make a really quick decision. I go to elite prospects. I see a guy's played 3 years. He's got 2 points in 3 years. See you later. I don't care about the analytics. You know what I mean? You got 3 points in 3 years. See you later. To the bus.
Yeah.
Okay, Scott.
Yeah, for me, I'm kind of similar with Darryl. I go over video with my players, and we watch our games, and we'll watch mistakes and analyze, and then I'll go out there after. So that's what I like to do, is watch their game, watch their shifts, go over where they need to improve, and then we go over practice, and then we'll go on and we'll improve it that way. Outside of looking at how many shots you're getting per game, or obviously turnovers and all that stuff. I mean, they do matter. I mean, stats don't really lie. But at the end of the day, like for me, where I'm coaching right now, it's just about developing these kids. And I mean, analytics, trying to get analytics through a 16, 15-year-old's head is just, it doesn't even make sense to them. They don't want to hear it. So, I mean, we'll watch, just going over video alone is hard enough with them. So getting through that is fine. But you guys, for me, I mean, I think the higher you go and the smaller things end up becoming, like the inches that you need to be successful, guys are willing to do and say whatever that they need to do to get a little bit of an extra edge. But, quite frankly, in the lower ranks, I mean, what are we talking about? I don't think we need to really be going over that in depth. Like, let the kids play hockey to an extent, and, let them have fun.
Guys, if I can add one thing, I remember when I had Cam Barker as a client towards the end of his career, and I had got Cam an offer to go to the KHL, play for Barry's Astana. And so before he went there, the team was kind of concerned at Cam's plus minus. So Cam was kind of one of those guys that didn't have the world's greatest plus minus. But I said, the guy puts up as a D-man 35, 40 points a year. They're very concerned. Europe and KHL, and I have a guy playing Dynamo Moscow. He's -6 right now in 19 games played. The team's concerned. Meanwhile, as a D-man, he's got 13 points in 16 games, but they're actually more concerned about the plus minus.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Especially knowing now that today we understand plus minus is not a lot of emphasis to put on it like in years past, right?
It's not a North American thing. It's a very European thing. European Russian thing. Like they live, eat,
Wow.
and sleep at plus minus stats.
Believe me, guys, the plus minus, it's either you're on a good team or bad team. Like I've all my years, I've been on good teams. I've been in the pluses. When you're on a bad team, you're in the minuses. That's just the reality of it.
And I'm going to send this video to one guy, Scott, a guy you played with. He was the king of the plus minus. He got the green jacket for the Regina Pats. Mark Schneider. Mark Schneider was minus 1 year.
He'd love that you just called him out for that right now.
One of the world's greatest guys.
Yeah, he is.
You've never met a guy.
Sorry, Mark.
Sorry, Mark. You've never met a guy who loves an A&W whistle dog like Mark Schneider, but minus 44 at the green jacket in Regina.
Well, I think, Scott, you should get us Mark, so we can get him on here so he can rebuttal on his own behalf. It'd be a little fun back and forth. Hey guys, man, we could go on like forever here. Obviously, we're going to connect up with you guys again, have more stuff to talk about and stuff. But man, it's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. Thanks so much for jumping in here tonight, guys.
All right. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah, that was awesome, guys. Thanks a lot for having us on.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Have a great season, guys.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Bye.
Oh man. So, guys, that segment today brought to you guys was our guest headliner. Brought to you by JR Web Design. Is your website stuck in the Stone Age? Well, you need JR Web Designs. They'll craft you a website that's as awesome as our show.
That was a wonderful segment with our guests, so we appreciate it both to Darryl and Scott, as Lost Trucker indicates. And she also mentioned that you have a solid base, analytics is useless. Go ahead.
No, that's a good point. So we're going to talk about that. I do find this interesting in this analytics. And Pavel, this is something that we've learned with our show over the seasons. No matter who we bring in, that is in the hockey know-how, right? When they have played the game, and they don't have to play the NHL level, but the ones that have, ones that have been in minor pro, ones that deal with, in agencies and scouts and management and coaching, we hear the same thing. There's something in analytics, even for the pro, but it's very minor. It is about the video. And I got to tell you, I feel like next week that should be my rant. People who are analytic geeks that don't know a single thing that they're actually talking about. So anyway, guys, sorry. No, that's okay. I was just going to let everyone know, make sure you follow us here on Two Guys in Hockey Talk. Go to our website, twoguysinhockeytalk.com. And you can find all of our guests. We're always trying to update our guests. It's always very difficult. If you're looking for a job and want to join our team, we're looking for someone to do some administrative stuff behind the scenes and work on stuff for us. But we also have been building, and you saw some of our writers that were coming on a little bit earlier, from our blog, the latest from our blog, and we have constant articles that are coming out. And we just hired, so we got Penguins, we got Bruins, we got college hockey, Russian hockey. We got people follow Oilers. We got people that follow Bruins, Flyers, the Los Angeles Kings. In fact, we're working on some small little pieces. We have about 3 more writers that are still working their way in. And go in, as well as even our guests that we had on tonight, both Scott Glennie, Darryl Wolski is already on our site. You can go in, we'll add today, and we'll add the actual video from it. And then you can be able to go in and check out and follow them on anywhere on their social media. In fact, we forgot to talk about to Scott. I don't know if he wants to be followed. Maybe he was trying to stay quiet, but I'll send out a note to Darryl. And if you're listening, Scott, you can send us a note. Just a quick email back if you do have a place that people can follow you at.
Very much true. I appreciate it. All right, Evan, I know you wanted to get into some NHL news.
Well, I think we're going to go with by the numbers to start here, bud.
Let's go then.
Puckpedia, the ultimate source for your NHL salary cap information, player contracts, team cap hits, transaction news, and injury news.
By the numbers.
All right, so we've got some news around the league by the numbers. So Alex Ovechkin, in my weekly post today, what?
No, I'm saying no. Yeah, Ovechkin, man. What can you say? We're talking about
a legend. We know that he's 42 goals away from beating Gretzky's record, 894. He hasn't scored yet. He's got an assist, which got him up to 700 assists. So the 7th all time in being able to achieve this when they played and beat the Vegas Golden Knights. So he's got 700 assists. And he needs some goals. And I think the debate is whether he'll be able to get 42 this season or next. I feel like it's next, but you can let me know, Evan, your thoughts.
Well, and I was just thinking, we have a writer that is joining us. So for all of you fantasy nerds and some of you who are into sports betting, we will be having a writer coming on who has done this previously, and they will be writing and sharing some odds on sports betting, on hockey games, and or for picking in your fantasy teams and why you should take or not take. I'm interested to hear his take. I've been saying it for a while. Ovechkin, he's going to have to play a full 3 seasons to be able to match that. I just think it's getting harder because the team is not as competitive. I mean, you brought it up last week. And by the way, if you're looking for our Western Conference, we won't have time to cover that. We only got about another 20 minutes. We have a lot of stuff we want to cover. So, Ovechkin, man, is a legend. He's going to go down probably, and I don't know where you guys are going to put him. Where would you put him? I put him in my top 15 all time.
I would say the same. Yeah, I think that's where he would belong. But we could have this debate another time. And I think it's better since once he retires, because then you can really assess his full pedigree of his work. He does have a Stanley Cup, which is a big one. He's got quite a few goals, second in goals. He's an elite player, elite winger that scored. Speaking of numbers, before we get to the Oilers, Evgeny Malkin has scored his 500th goal tonight. So
congratulations.
Numbers. Wow. It's pretty impressive. And Michkov got his first. So I know that Jamie Basco, who was on the show a few weeks ago.
Yeah, he got 2 last night.
2, but that's it. But the team he was playing against, Evan, I know you wanted to talk about Edmonton a little bit by the numbers in terms of their cap salary. And they're not the only one. But, as of a few days ago, you indicated that the Oilers are supposed to have about $9 million in cap salary space at the trade deadline if Evander Kane isn't back. Now, we all know he had that surgery, successful for the sports hernia. I'm surprised it took so long. That's $4.5 million that he brings up. And then they also have that $5.1 million in LTIR if need be. If he does come back early, it will change things. And
so that the 4.5, though, the 4.5 is what they will occur. And that's what I wanted to talk about, how they're occurring that. Okay.
So go ahead.
All right. So as Pavel was just telling you guys, so if he doesn't return, you got $5.1 million essentially will be LTIR money that can be used at the trade deadline. But things get messed up if they think he's coming back before. So if they can pull a Mark Stone or a Kucherov and have him somehow magically appear for the first game or second game of the playoffs, then they're going to have $5.1 million at the trade deadline. Now, add to that, what they've done is we know they didn't match Broberg or Holloway. They let both walk. They unloaded Cody Ceci because they wanted to fit the LTIR and not go into LITR to start the year, but do it once you have your opening roster because then you get full cap relief. Otherwise, you don't get that cap relief at the trade deadline. And so we will have more discussion around this and a few other teams with Hart Levine. So this information is sent out. By the way, go follow at Puckpedia on X, and you can hear a lot of the information Hart Levine puts out on a regular basis. So essentially, $9 million they could have at the trade deadline. My problem, Pavel, is that, and I'll try and keep this short, but my problem is they went in with no number 2 or 3 right side defensemen.
Yes.
Playing with Nurse, who already had an injury, was struggling in the end of last year, struggling to go into this year. We know he doesn't work with just any partner really well with his style of play. It's been a while since he's been fully healthy, probably a year and a half at least. And so they started the year. I was worried about the confidence of the goaltender starting the season with a poor defense. You needed at least a top 4. Cody Ceci wasn't perfect, but he would fit in there. But they wanted the cap space. Yeah. It was more important for them to have cap space. Well, now, folks, they got cap space a little bit. Now, they messed up about $100,000 because of the Raphael Lavoie situation and back and forth, who's now a Vegas Golden Knight. Good for him. Well, he's technically owned by the Las Vegas Golden Knights or the Vegas Golden Knights. So anyway, I think that this was a bad move by Jackson and Bowman. I think that they've really caught – you are not talking about the same team that came out of the playoffs last year. Not just tired. They are not the same team with chemistry, and their back end is. I would give them on an. If I was giving them a grade, I would give it a C-. Their defense, and then you add in maybe your offense could be a C+, maybe a B at max this year because you don't have the depth really. I don't think they have the depth. So numbers matter, guys. Numbers matter.
Not to the Edmonton Oilers fans. So watch them continue to be competitive and try to make it for a playoff spot. And then in the postseason, anything happens. You
Okay,
guys,
man. PDS, the ultimate source for your NHL salary cap information, player contracts, team cap hits, transaction news, and injury news.
By the numbers.
I cut you off. Sorry.
That's okay. I was just going to say, you guys can let us know what you think of the Oilers this season and whether they're going to do well. I know they're not the only team struggling. You look at Nashville and Colorado. But moving on to other NHL news, there's been quite a bit. First thing I want to just acknowledge is that the Columbus Blue Jackets did honor Johnny Gaudreau and had only the Columbus Blue Jackets had 13 minutes of like puck drop without any movement, as well as 13 seconds, sorry, as well as nobody on the ice for that winger spot for Johnny. And then when Sean Monahan scored that one goal, because it was an electric game, I enjoyed watching it. He pointed to the rafters where they lifted up his banner. So really nice gesture. Both teams wore 13 and Gaudreau jerseys for both teams. They brought purple Gatorade and Skittles because that's something that Johnny liked. And it was a very moving and touching tribute. So I appreciate it, as well as not only them, but Calgary and a few other teams, of course, made notion to it.
Yeah.
Now,
and Toronto.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and Toronto, rumors. They've been in rumor mill now for the last, 4 days?
Yes.
Just around Timothy Lindgren. Now, question that everyone's bringing out, is he possibly someone, even though he's struggling in Toronto, could that be someone, because it's hard to find a defenseman that Edmonton might want to be interested in?
He's pricey, though. He signed a 2-year, $3+ million contract till next year. So even though he's a right-hand shot, if he's not even trusted in Toronto's defensive land, why would Edmonton want him, let alone other teams? Like, they're against the cap. It's going to be tough. And he's fallen out of favor with Craig Berube there, the new head coach. So we'll see what happens. Some rebuilding team could definitely use him. I look at a San Jose. I look at a Anaheim who could definitely use him, but who knows? We also know that Kevin Shattenkirk and Mark Giordano remain unsigned. They're both veteran defensemen still looking for new teams. Haven't done anything. If you need an agent, Darryl Wolski is your man. Go talk to him, although I'm sure they're represented already. And before we get to Calgary, I know that there's no easy way to kind of transition to this, but Rick Westhead, who's done some excellent reporting about the hockey world, reported that another woman has come forward alleging she was sexually assaulted by a group of major junior hockey players. I believe the story was on tonight's CTV exclusive. Once again, people taking silly actions, dumb actions for something that shouldn't be happening in the hockey world. But again, this puts the spotlight on the hockey world, on hockey culture, and we have to really change this behavior, Evan. I think this is just unacceptable.
Absolutely.
And we don't need this anymore, right? Like, there's more news that's going to follow with this. We're going to continue to monitor it. But again,
I was just trying to look to see if I could find anything quickly just to give you guys an update. So
really,
we'll check out.
It's been tough, and I applaud Rick for doing such good work, because he really knows how to uncover these things that often people believe that they can easily bury. Which
I think he unjustly too. He gets a lot of people upset that he's exposing a lot. Even like Soccer Canada, and there was some different stuff. And, guys, first of all, remember, he's a journalist. It's not always good news when you're a journalist. Very few people follow a journalist because of the good news they share. The whole world wants to know about the terrible news. Very seldom it's a sad fact of human behavior. People are just dying to hear of the negative news. But at least this news, what's the positive, is the exposure of what the actions are happening. And so I as much as I don't always like his approach, I will say that Rick has really done a good job. And guys, you can follow him on X, and I believe he's got his own articles if you go through with TSN and some other groups. So, but yeah, so check out CTV National if you need to get more information around, and we will keep you updated with what we know is factual. Because we're not even gonna. I've been told some things, but right now they're all rumors as far as I know. So I'm not going to share any of those things.
Now, again, no easy way to transition from this, but we do want to talk about the hot start that the Calgary Flames are having. 4-0-0 so far, and you were kind of tweeting about this, I believe. You guys have to go follow Evan on Twitter/X at RevEv, just about the fact that Craig Conroy, the GM there, isn't going to be trading anybody, and he's not planning on selling off any of the core players. So you're thinking about the Backlunds, the Kadris, the Jonathan Huberdeaus, even though that's a bit of
Rasmus Anderson.
Rasmus Anderson, who's due for a raise next season, and there's definitely some GMs, interested in that. So your thoughts on the Flames and their hot start?
Yeah.
And what expected?
How about this Huberdeau, eh? How about Huberdeau, eh? Guys, you need to understand. So are you going to sell? Are you selling high right now? Now everyone wants to buy? No, I actually hope. I believe I still don't know what, but there's so many things in the psyche of players that they go through. So I know we only have 6 minutes. We got a lot to cover. I just want to say that, you know what, Flames fans, enjoy Huberdeau. You need to have those players, even if and enjoy the hot start. You guys must be conflicted because you want to win. You're excited, but you also want right now, this year, you want a top 10 this year and next year, and then start rolling, but build the players in the meantime. So like the Flyers, but hey, last year, the Flyers, I mean, they did fairly well by not making the playoffs. So they actually got like Luchenko, right? So anyway, great start for them. I think you wanted to talk a little bit about the television deal that happened.
Yes. So it looked like that on Monday night, the Amazon team bought out the rights through Rogers to host some of the hockey games. And it was Pittsburgh versus Montreal that was featured as the first ever game on Canada Prime, which, of course, was a surprise to some people when they couldn't find it on their locally owned channels, except for in Quebec where they could on their French channel. So this is definitely something that I think is going to be a trend in the future. I know that the NHL is really trying to gobble up a lot of those TV deals, not only with TV, but streaming services. So when you're thinking of the Disney Plus, the Netflix, the Amazon Primes, this is the way of the future, Evan. And I think more people are going to be streaming services given how those companies are often trying to engage their fans by having the most content, the most original content, and now live action or sports or events hosted on their platform. And of course, Amazon, pretty wealthy off. They can do it. So expect more to see this. Not to mention the deal that they had with the series, which was phenomenal. I watched it in a weekend.
Face Off, I think it was it?
Face Off, yeah. And I loved it. I thought there was some good stories, and I see this happening more. People can complain about, this and that, but this is the way of the future. This is what, and I'm going to speak that I'm not as young as I was, but this is for the young people, Evan. Just a quick story. I know that there was, it got out that when Chicago played Calgary recently over the weekend, it got out that Mr. Lost track of the Amazon game was pretty decent. Did enjoy it. That Mr. Connor Bedard was somewhere, and so all these fans rushed to go see him. And there was a video online circulating about how everyone was waiting just to get a glimpse of Connor Bedard. And this kid, second year in the league, and he's already being followed by so many young players because they want to imitate him. They want to really see what he's able to do on and off the ice, the stick, how he tapes his stick, what he's using. Jordan mentions that he cried at the end of the series, saying McDavid cried was the worst. It was a very emotional thing, and you really, as McDavid would say in his own words, if you're going to watch this show, dig in right now. So anyway, so that's just that. A few other small notes.
Can I mention, just because in Canada, there's lots, and I see it on X all the time, people are confused. Now, America still needs to figure it out in the United States, how to deal with their packages. But in Canada, if you get the Sportsnet Premier package, you get every game. You get the TSN games. You get all the American games that come on. you get also the Prime games still on your Sportsnet Premier package if you pay for the full package, guys. So essentially, for I think it's $250 for the full year, you can get every single game to be able to pull up. And of course, that's something I do to be able to keep on top of everything because you can't obviously be there. So I just want to mention that, but that's only in Canada. For you in the US, it's much more difficult, and that's something you need to keep complaining. Complain to the local teams, complain to the NHL. Go to NHL.com, send them letters, send them emails. You've got to keep pressing it.
Yeah. Now, just a few things before, Evan, we finish up, and we'll maybe just jump into hockey history. I want you to share a cool story.
I do need to talk about one thing around the rink, though, that it's important this time.
So Colorado goaltending, I know it's a bit of a problem with Georgiev. I'm sure they'll figure it out. I know Cale Makar kind of called himself out for how he played in that one game, and I know they'll be better. They are a playoff team.
Yeah.
And of course, there's been rumblings about Jeremy Roenick getting called inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Is that a fair decision? Is that the right decision? People always revert back to Alexander Mogilny. I still think he should be in there. The fact that he's not is a tragedy. I don't know your thoughts on it, on Jeremy Roenick being in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Go ahead.
No, I great guy. I just don't think he belongs in the Hall of Fame. Especially when you got guys like McGillney's not there. I think this is just ended discussion for me.
That's fair enough. So,
hey, last news. Why don't you share about Buffalo before we move on to around the rink? I got one quick thing I do need to make an announcement on.
For sure. So there was a video sent out, again, circulating online. You can go check it out online, of Peyton Krebs and Rasmus Dahlin, the new captain of the Buffalo Sabres, getting into it in a scrap. It was after kind of a hip collision that happened in the center of the ice that they had to be kind of separated. People made a big deal out of it. I don't think it's a big deal. I think players play with emotion and intensity, even in practice. They're competitive guys. Sometimes, it could be an awkward hit, and you don't want to see that. And I've seen it before. You saw it in 2019 with the St. Louis Blues. I'm trying to remember the players' names. But Robert Bertuzzo, I think, was one of them, and I can't remember the other one. They got in a scrap. They got in a fight, actually. So, things happen. It's intense. Hockey players are competitive. As you heard Scott, you want to be the best, and you want to prove yourself. You are trying to play for ice time. I think it's a nothing burger, Evan, but your thoughts on it. And Buffalo's struggling right now. I think they need anything. Yeah. And Linderuff maybe believes, and I think in comments, boys will be boys.
Yeah, I'm with Ruff on this. They got to work themselves out of it, and sometimes you just got to let the kids be kids and figure it out on their own. You can't come parent everything through. So, All right, let's move over to our segment. This next segment called Around the Rink. If you're a fan of hard-hitting, exciting hockey, catch the Kalkaska Battlers.
Around the Rink
is brought to you by the Kalkaska Battlers. Let them be your local hockey heroes. So I do want to bring a special attention to there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. I'll bring more up next week around some other stuff around the rink, just because we had 2 guests on tonight. So we went about 10 minutes longer in that segment. I want to talk just a moment and update everybody. If you've heard stuff around the Alberta Junior Hockey League, the AJHL, and the Drayton Valley Thunder. Now, what has supposedly, and some of this is rumored, some of it, I've gotten some pretty good contacts. In fact, I was corrected, something I had shared, which was secondhand. And I was actually corrected by a league exec that sent me a direct message. So understanding, this is what I got so far. And by the way, I'm allowed to be wrong. So let's be careful. The Drayton Valley Thunder let go of all their coaches. And they just fired them, and they were putting this all aside, and they're going to hire a whole new, immediate they were fired. What's understood is that the son of one of the owners, or I think there's a part ownership, the main owner, ended up being traded, and he was mad, and so they just got rid of the people. However, the players decided to stand up with the family and the parent and whoever, their representatives, and said, we're not playing another game till you deal with this. This is not okay. And so immediately, I believe others stepped in. I don't know if it was league or who it was, and said, this isn't okay. Now, I don't know the truth to this. I was told that there's a part of the shares that are being sold out, and that owner is stepping aside. Something to do with his son, something with it. Now, I could be off, and I could be wrong on the details of that, of the specifics, but the bottom line is there was a rift between the owner, the son being traded, and the coach being let go, and within less than 24 hours, they immediately turned this over. They brought the coaches back, but of course it was a last minute, and so the kids weren't ready to play because they were going to sit out, and they still got out. I think it was a 3-0 loss, but the fact that they still got out there to play that game. Politics, man. The AJHL just lost all these teams last year, and they got all this other stuff going on. So it's tough on the league.
I 100% agree. There's not much more I can add to that.
Okay, guys. So anyway, that was our segment for Around the Rink. If you're a fan of hard-hitting, exciting hockey, catch the Kalkaska Battlers.
Around the Rink
Is brought to you by the Kalkaska Battlers. Let them be your local hockey heroes.
Well, we all know we love going overtime, and that is why our nickname is Two Guys in Overtime, because we definitely like to go out. So we're going to finish out the night with a little hockey history that Evan's going to share a little story. As you know, we like to share stories around the world of hockey, and there's always really cool tidbit stories. So if you missed last week's story, it's a doozy, so go back and check out our episode. We've also got another article coming out from Patrick Conway tomorrow about the KHL, so keep an eye out for that. We are continually getting articles out there weekly. We are writing nonstop. We are always looking for writers, so feel free to reach out to myself and or Evan on Twitter/X or our email at twoguysinhockeytalk.com. We love at gmail.com. We love hearing from you. And we are here every Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time to bring you all things hockey, KHL, AHL, BCHL, and even the rink in Evan's yard.
Well, what's funny is my neighbors have a rink across 2 yards, and I've been thinking I need to strap on the old pads and see if I pull my groin again, just playing with the young boys. Okay, guys. Sorry, do you guys have your
Go ahead. Bring out a little hockey history.
The Kalkaska Battlers presents
hockey history.
Catch the Kalkaska Battlers as they compete in the APHL. Check the skills, speed, heart. Make sure you catch a game and experience the thrill of live hockey. Go Battlers!
Let me take you back to December 23rd, 1987. Okay, 87, okay? 87, it was just a few months before that the Oilers beat the Flyers and Ron Hextall won the Conn Smythe Trophy against the Edmonton Oilers, even though they did not win the cup. Now, that next season, Ron Tugnut of the Quebec Nordique was taking on the Boston Bruins, and he put on the performance of history that would go down in the NHL books. The game was a back and back for guys like Kyle and some of our Bruins, Grant Cummings, one of our writers. You guys know what I'm talking about. It was a relentless barrage of shots. He made 70 shots in that game. His 70 save performance remains one of the most impressive goaltending displays in history. It was a testament of his skill, determination, and sheer will to win. I don't know if anyone's ever faced that. I played in one game. Now, this was a ball hockey game. The pads were heavier, and I was only 19 years old in a ball hockey tournament, and I faced 62 shots. It was 62 shots to 5, and we lost 5-1. I felt pretty good with that many shots on net. But I'm telling you, it was a testament. And that game is still remembered by Nordique fans everywhere. Tugnut's name is etched in the team's history books of the Quebec Nordiques. And by the way, they won that game. That was one of the greatest things you'll find in hockey history.
The Kalkaska Battlers presents
Hockey history.
Catch the Kalkaska Battlers as they compete in the APHL. Check the skills, speed, heart. Make sure you catch a game and experience the thrill of live hockey. Go Battlers!
Well, that was a great story. And Jordan says if Evan ever plays net, top shed bar down, give him that giddy special as a silly. You know what he'll do? Jordan will just, as he skates by you after scoring, he's just going to whisper facts about the WHL and CHL. and about draft picks. And G-Round, who's been writing for us about the Boston Bruins. So welcome, Grant. He'll never forget it. Cam Neely gave him big props after that game. Yeah, it was a great story. We always love hearing it. Tune in next week. We are going to have more of this content for you guys. We have had a wonderful episode once again. Again, thanks to our guests, Darryl Wolski, the player's agent out there, and Scott
Glennie of the WHL, Brandon Wheat Kings formerly, and number 8 overall pick of the Dallas Stars.
That was just a treat, and we had a blast once again. Evan, it's that time of the night again. For those who were tuning in earlier and said, why would we tune in? Well, because it was an action-packed show from coast to coast, 200-foot show with bar-down hits and topics. So we love hearing from you guys. Remember to give us a like, follow, subscribe. We will be back here next week. Articles continually coming out. We appreciate it. Any final thoughts, Evan?
I just want to say I want to give props up every week. I want to do this to the U.S. and Canada. By the way, Australia, you guys have been, I think this last week was the most Australian fans we had following the show. But Nevada was the top state this last, and Alberta dominated our fans this last week following the show. So props up to Albertans. Ontario's getting close, though. They're coming in second every week. So you guys, you got more fans out there that can jump on the show. So share, get out, subscribe. We'd love to have you. Any last thought from you, bud?
It's been a rig-a-ding dandy show. We appreciate it. We'll see you guys next week. But in the words of Aid Whalen, in the meantime and in between time,
keep your stick on the ice.
Stay safe. Have a good night, everyone.